Can you expand a little bit on that? What is it, and what is it trying to do? Who's on it? What?
Yeah, so it's got people varying from the oil and gas industry all the way to people that are farmers and ranchers, professors of climate science or environmentalists. And basically, the idea is to come up with some real solutions as to what takes Montana further. Some of it even is as small as making sure we have electric charging stations for electric vehicles, because we have only 900 electric vehicles or something. I think it was 948 were registered in Montana. And that's going to change here pretty fast. And what do we do about it? How do we make sure that we are there to meet the demand as the world changes?
So again, it's called?
The Montana Climate Solutions Council.
Okay, and as a council, it exists as what? Part of the government, a separate entity?
They're separate. I mean, it is an appointment from the governor. He also came out with basically a big statement about climate change. It was the first time in his preamble that he ever had said that Montana is desiring a carbon-free future. That's the first time in history that's ever happened in Montana. Which to us was really exciting and encouraging,
Right.
because that also means this is something that people are really needing to talk about and are starting to talk about instead of just giving it lip service.
Right, right.
Does it have any teeth?
Does it have any teeth? I think that it's too soon to tell.
It could have teeth if people realize how urgent this issue is and vote the right people into positions of power to make it have teeth. But
Right.
unfortunately, I don't think we're quite there yet. We're working on it, though.
Well, the usual thing is they say, oh, a panel like that, oh, if they're good and they have moral suasion.
right.
Why?
Well, I think it's just this is the first time that they met was they've only had one or two sessions so far.
Yeah, they've only had a couple, and I think
Right.
that there's several smaller committees within it. I think that people have really big and great ideas, but it's also about finding kind of that middle ground that we talked about earlier.
Right.
Of it does take these different views to come up with the best solution.
Well, yeah, and the thing I respect about that is it really does look like they tried to get people from all different backgrounds and interests. But, so the scope of it is great, but at the same time, I can see where that could really slow progress down because they have such extreme interests that are involved on that board. So I'm happy to hear that they're breaking down into smaller groups, so maybe they will be able to get something done.
Right. And hopefully at some point put together proposals that can be enacted as
Right.
legislation or as executive orders. The idea there is to make sure that Governor Bullock has input from a wide variety of people in order to move the needle.
So
Right.
Bullock started it or put it
Right,
together?
with the
Yeah.
executive order.
Right.
Yep.
So its continuation depends on the governor?
I think its continuation depends on who is sitting in that capital.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So the next governor could say,
Right.
all gone.
And we sure
Point
hope
taken.
that won't happen.
Right, right.
And it might.
Yes. So there's a sense of urgency
Yes,
to get the
there
right
is.
governor
Yes,
in
there
there.
is. Yep.
I noticed that is this subject was number 9 on that great video that you
Thank you.
guys
We had
put
fun with it.
together, and we will have a link to that video. But tell us about how that came about, and maybe run down what your top 10 were for last year.
Let me
'cause-
just fill in. They put together, every organization, nonprofit or otherwise, puts together, what did we do last year? And it's usually very dry. And,
Right, but I thought you had an interesting
and
story
they have
about
put
how
together
how you
a
did
video,
that.
which they did
Yeah.
themselves, and it covers what they consider their top 10, and that format, if you want to familiar with it.
Yeah. Well, it was fun, and we had an event February 28th in Helena. We do it every year, but boy, we had 200 people at the Holter Museum. We had a great time. It was a fundraiser for us, but also an opportunity to showcase what we do. We don't just ask for your money and then sit on it. We try to do the best we can with it to move our mission forward, and to that end, we had a pretty pretty wild year, full of stuff, everything ranging from accountability to working with Governor Bullock on that executive order to revamping our internal policies. I guess I would focus on the thing that we are very excited about because it's happening very soon. We are launching something called the Montana Engagement Project, which is a collaborative effort with Western Native Voice. And we will be going to northeastern Montana with a canvas. So people who go around door to door, knock on doors, introduce themselves, have conversations at the door to get input, to take input, and basically make sure that they leave behind information about what the impacts of the Keystone XL pipeline are, because we plan to be in communities along the route of the pipeline and also in the Fort Peck Reservation. And so we'll have canvassers all over the place making sure that the communities are aware what's happening and that we are hearing and from them. And the cool part about this is we will be embedding a professional podcast producer to join them and to tell the story of the pending construction of KXL, because it's still a thing. I think people have forgotten about it, but it is very much an issue that is still pending. And we want to make sure, wearing our hats as educators, that people are aware of exactly what's happening in this state, even though far away from here.
Right. So exactly, what is that process going to involve? I mean, you're talking about public education.
Yep.
And
it'll involve a team of canvassers, people who go to a community and they knock on doors. And we're talking communities like Glasgow, Baker, Circle, Wolf Point, Poplar. Again, these are the communities right along the route there. And talking about all the aspects. For example, sheriff's offices in that part of the country are looking at what happened with the Dakota Access Pipeline in North Dakota, and they're saying to themselves, whoa, if we have a situation like that here, are we ready for it? We want to make sure that if the pipeline comes through, they're aware of the economic impacts of it, but also some of the other things that I don't think people necessarily think about, the quote unquote man camps that come with it. And there are issues that come with man camps, temporary workers coming in and getting a job done. Well, that doesn't necessarily always have a positive impact on that community. We've seen it before, right?
Well, and we know people in eastern Montana are already seeing the negative effects. They have for a long time of fracking, the Bakken development.
Right.
So they know what those kind of things are. But so I guess what I'm wondering is, so you're going to bring attention to what some of the negative effects of the pipeline.
Yep.
The potential spills, things like that.
Exactly. And there are all sorts of things that we want to make sure everybody is aware of. So, for example, right now the plan is for the pipeline to go under the river right outside the boundary of the Fort Peck Reservation. Well, that crossing right now is on a fault line. So one little jolt of the earth could rupture a pipeline that will affect the water table, that affects everybody in that neck of the woods. Does everybody know that? I don't think they do. So our goal is to make sure that we tell the fair and accurate story about exactly what's going to happen if and when this project moves forward. Because right now it's not stopping. So it's our job to make sure that people have the information necessary to form their own opinions on it, but also be very truthful about it so that we can move forward making good decisions about things like this in the future with good information, and also being respectful of the communities that are there. If people support the pipeline, we want to hear it. Why? Tell us why. We want to understand it better. Communities in tribal communities, tribal governments, which are sovereign nations of their own, might have a completely different perspective. We want to tell that story too. And a lot of times they haven't been consulted with.
You're working with one of the tribes, or at least the tribal organization.
Yes, we are. We are, with is a good word, because that is very much what we intend to do. But the Fort Peck tribes, headquartered in Poplar, we want to make sure that we are communicating with them and in touch with them. And in fact, we'll be meeting with them this month.
So it crosses tribal lands?
The pipeline itself
in Montana
does not, but right outside. So it is very fair to say that the pipeline itself would impact Indian country in a very big way, even though the land itself, the Indian land there isn't, the pipeline won't cross over it.
The other part of it, too, is that we're going to summarize this and deliver it to all of our elected officials, which I think is really important because that listening hasn't necessarily happened in a bigger way.
Right. So it's a big, lofty project. It's something that we are excited about. It's ready to go. We are actually hiring up for it. If anybody's interested in being one of these canvassers, you're welcome to apply for the job. At the end of the day, it's also a model that we would like to replicate all over the state. So if this is a success that we can tell this story in northeastern Montana, well, where else can we take the Montana Engagement Project to do the same thing, to tell a story about what is happening with the conservation movement, with our public lands, with our clean water, and do the same thing everywhere in collaboration with a bunch of other organizations, whoever wants to join us, frankly.
Mm-hmm.
Whatever mix you can put together.
Right. Yep.
So, any other elements that you want to highlight from your list of 10? Or?
Oh gosh, I think we covered quite a bit of it. I just, I guess the last thing I would note is, since we're here in Livingston, Livingston seems to be a very fascinating community because it pretty good representation of where the eastern part of the state meets the western part of the state, plus you've got the Yellowstone River and the park just south of here. There's a reason that we've decided to hold our birthday gala here again this year. So October 1st, which is a Thursday because we know better than to disrupt weekends and hunting season. October 1st of this year, we'll be celebrating again at the Livingston Depot.
The last one was the 20th, right?
It was October 10th of last year, and it was a.
I mean, your 20th anniversary.
Oh yeah, it was 20th birthday. Correct. Yeah, it was 20th birthday. So this is our 21st year. So yeah, good reason to celebrate a 21st birthday, and more details will come out. But if anybody's interested, we'd love to have you there, and it's a lot of fun and another fundraiser for us because. If I could make a pitch, the work we do isn't for free. I mean, we are constantly looking for funding in order to do it. We are a nonprofit organization, but we are also growing, which is very exciting. And I think we've got a lot of work to do. And I think if we can show people the work that we do and that it is a good investment in a good cause, an important cause, we would respectfully seek that funding and be very grateful for it because the earth is worth fighting for.
Absolutely.
And because we were also in Livingston, at our last big birthday gala, we did celebrate 2 of our legislative champions, and one happened to be Lori Bishop,
Yay.
who is here in Livingston and been an ardent champion for conservation issues, particularly renewable energy. But you guys should be proud of all the work that she's doing. She does it with grace and kindness. It was really great for us to be able to honor her this last year.
Yeah, we're super proud of her. And she received your Blue Marble Award?
Yeah, Blue Marble Award. Yeah, our inaugural Blue Marble Award, which is kind of a neat way to say thank you. It's a little pin. It resembles the
kind of
famous...
globe.
Yeah, it resembles the picture taken by the Apollo spacecraft, and but a small thing that she can wear, and
that's beautiful.
And we'll be doing it again this year. So
that's excellent. And I noticed she also got one of your lifetime champions on your legislative scorecard. So yay, Lori Bishop.
Yeah, exactly. She is paving the way. I also would say, like, as a woman, it was really exciting to have her be such a strong champion and leader up at the state legislature because there's not a lot of us that are there. So we really appreciate that kinship as well.
Yeah, we won't go into it, but the legislative scorecard is part of your projects.
Correct. Yep.
Right.
Which is what it sounds like. You keep track of who votes on what bill and who is pro-conservation and who is not, and people can go online, right?
Yep.
And see that.
mtvoters.org/scorecard. It's all there. We encourage folks to look at it because, I mean, everybody's represented by somebody in the legislature, senator and a representative, and there are 9 votes that we scored, and we let them know in advance that, hey, we're going to score you before you vote on this. And some lawmakers, I'm sorry to say, could care less. They don't care.
Right.
In fact, they are proud of the fact that they have a 0% score with us. That's insane. We live in a state with public lands. You should never be doing that.
Yeah.
And if you do, that's your right, but your constituents ought to be aware of it. And so that's where
Exactly.
we come in.
So before you cast your vote, you can always see where that candidate stands on their legislative.
Right. And these are all common sense things, by the way. These aren't, wacky issues that we just woke up and decided to push someday. These are very basic common sense issues that, again, apply to all Montanans.
Right.
Yeah, and I think that it brings us back around to your organization as a whole. Montana, conservation, voters.
Right. I'm glad you mentioned that, Nelson, because the voters is our last name. And so to that end, it's not just conservation that we care about. We also very much care about the ability and the right for people to cast their votes and do it with education that we provide. And so if we get wind of any effort to suppress voting in this state, which happens far too often, if we get word that there are efforts underway to make voting more difficult for people, we come in there too, because again, we believe that in order to affect change, you need to have the right people making decisions on your behalf. And if you can't vote for those people in a way that is easy as your right should be, then we have a problem, and we will take
Right.
action to fix it the best we can.
Right. So voting first.
Yes. So
Vote.
Very important. I wish everybody who could did, and they don't, and that's sad, but we'll try to change it.
And we are too. That's one of our focuses
particularly
here.
with this issue or this
Right.
this cluster of issues around conservation. It's again, we stress most people in Montana support that.
Right. And again,
Right.
these
They
are
just-
issues that transcend partisan politics, or they should. And
They
if they
should.
don't, then that's a darn shame. But we believe they do. And at the end of the day, we can come together and celebrate the fact that we realize that we live in the last best place. It is worth protecting. I mean, there's a reason people wait their entire lifetimes to come see the national park that's just 50 miles down the road. And we get to live here. And when things happen like tens of thousands of whitefish dying in the river because of climate change, we want our officials to pay attention to things like that. We want them to address the problem and not dismiss it as some wacky left-wing conspiracy. That's not what we're doing. We're in the business of fighting for what's real.
Right.
And there's nothing more real than breathing clean air and drinking clean water and enjoying a picnic in a piece of land that you own. Very basic.
And on that note, thank
Amen.
you, Whitney, very much for coming here. And Aaron, I hope that you will. Well, I hope this is a good year for you. It's going to be a tough year. I can tell that all up and down the line for every issue, but a lot of complications.
Yeah.
It's a critical one.
It-
So
it-
everybody's got to vote.
I will tell you, we have a team. It's a very small team. We're scrappy, but we're used to challenges. We're ready for the fight. It is going to be a fight. It is something that we are not afraid to do. We have no problem holding powerful people accountable, no matter what it means for us. We get called all sorts of names. It doesn't matter. At the end of the day, we're doing right by our kids. And at the end of the day, I sleep well at night knowing that.
Excellent.
Thank you.
All right.
Thank you guys.
Thank you
Appreciate
very
it.
much.
This was the first interview we've done with an organization. We want to do this because there are in Montana a lot of very interesting organizations, particularly to do with, not so much with politics, but with issues involving Montana and the land and climate change and that sort of thing.
Right, and an organization that engages voters, which is a very important thing. If you have policies or issues that you're promoting, if you can't get people to vote for the candidates that are going to represent those policies, then,
Yeah, well,
it's sort of like step one.
I hearken back to what they said, and this is my own experience too, that 30, 40 years ago, And everybody on all political sides were in favor of conservation and in favor of preserving the environment.
Right.
And it's saddening to be at this point where we have to apologize for not having Republicans on the show to say things like that because they don't hold these positions anymore. But that's the truth of it, and that's something that Montana conservation voters have to deal with all the time. But their main point is conservation and voting and getting people out to support the candidates who support conservation. Pretty simple formula.
Yep. And in a state like Montana, it's very important. So we're grateful for the work they do. And it sounds like they're getting more and more organized, so we'll be hearing a lot from them in the
Yeah, I hope so.
coming
It's going to be a very interesting, particularly Senate race this year. So those things have changed. Anyway, for myself, Nelson King, and Dixie Hart, I'd say goodbye and good evening, and thank you very much for listening. This has been a podcast runs through it, coming to you from downtown Livingston in Sound Color Studios.